Hey, what's up, guys? Hope you're having a good week. I wanted to talk really quickly about the Davis Roach fight this past weekend, give some quick thoughts. I know you've already seen 1,000 podcasts talking about this. Well, here's 1,001. I know I'm kind of late to the party. Hey, I got two kids. So let's jump right into this. But actually, before I get into it in detail, I want to preface there's nothing wrong with being a Gervonta Davis fan. The majority of Tank fans are just boxing fans that enjoy watching him fight. He's an exciting, fun fighter. He's explosive offensively. He has a lot of defensive liabilities, so he gets touched a lot. That makes him very vulnerable on any given night to lose a fight. And that's what makes him fun to watch. That's all part of what makes him fun to watch. So the majority of Tank fans, they're just fight fans. I'm not going to address them, but there is this group inside that bubble. There's a bubble within the bubble of what I call the cult. And I call them a cult because they act like a cult. And these are the same types of people that right now they're parishioners of the Church of Gervonta Davis. They worship at the altar of Tank. They were the same ones who worshiped at the altar of Errol Spence. And before him, it was Deontay Wilder. And every time that fighter gets exposed as being human and flawed and not quite as elite as they were marketed as, that group of people freaks out and loses their minds. And my question to them is, well, there are two questions. One, how many times can you see the same movie and be fooled by the plot? If you watch Breaking Bad the first time, there's lots of twists and turns and explosions and crazy stuff that like keeps you entertained and you can really enjoy that show. But upon the second watch, you know the twists and turns are coming. And then you realize, this show isn't that great, actually. There's no character development outside of Walter White. The plot is hysterically, almost offensively unrealistic and unbelievable, right? So without those twists and turns, once you know what's coming, you kind of see it for what it is, right? How many times can you watch Breaking Bad and be like, oh shit, I didn't see that coming? That's the cult. Every single time this happens, they lose their shit. So anyway, real quick, Gervonta Davis fights Lamont Roach. And I think it's very important that we set the table with this. I'm sorry. Second question for the Colt, real quick. Second question. Why is the O so important to you? Why is the undefeated record so important? If your guy loses, if Gervonta Davis for his next 10 fights took on the absolute best at 135 and 140, and he lost 4 of those fights, who gives a shit? Who cares? Why do you obsess over the O? Anyway, it's important that we realize why Lamont Roach was picked. Okay. Now a lot of people are playing Monday morning quarterback and saying, oh, I knew it was going to be a close fight. I told you Roach was for real. Right. I told you Roach could fight. Everyone's saying that. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people are playing Monday morning quarterback. These were the same people that had that picked Gervonta Davis to win the fight. Going into this fight, the odds were minus 1,800 for Tank to win. That means you had to bet $1,800 on Tank to win $100. That is a gross mismatch. And these are the odds makers. These are not crazy wacko fans or people with an agenda. These are people that do this for a living. It's literally how they feed themselves. Okay. It's how they pay their bills and keep the lights on. The professional odds makers saw this as a negative 1,800 fight going in. Okay. So no, this wasn't seen as a pick-em fight and Lamont Roach really had a chance to win. No, the promotion and the people in charge of Tank's career chose him for a reason. None of this means Lamont Roach is a bad fighter. And I said that going in. Lamont Roach isn't a bad fighter. He's a good fighter. He's not an elite level guy. He's not on that level. And as a professional, he doesn't hit hard enough to get it done at the elite level. But he's a very good practitioner, very good about his craft. And he, no surprise that he put a lot of leather on Gervonta Davis, and actually, I think outthrew and outlanded him in the fight. And I think he was more accurate. Don't quote me on that. I can't remember off the top of my head. But he doesn't punch hard. And he's a junior lightweight. He's not a lightweight, right? He was brought up in weight, so he doesn't punch hard for his own division. Then he was brought up to the next division. That's why he was selected. He was a guy that they thought they could market because, you know, the beltway thing, they're from the same part of the country, these two fighters, and they knew he'd give Tank good rounds and it'd be, you know, technically a good fight. I do have to say about the fight itself, you know, one of the things I always say when I defend Gervonta Davis is, yeah, I don't like his resume. For a so-called pound for pound generational talent, his resume is shit. But he sells tickets and he's entertaining. Well, he wasn't entertaining in this fight. This fight sucked. It was lackluster. It was dull. It was not the passionate, explosive affair that you expect to see from Gervonta Davis. And I think they expected, okay, this guy Roach will come in here. He might touch us up a little bit, but he can't hurt us. Tank will turn it up in the late rounds, put some heat on him, drop him at least once or twice, or maybe even stop him and win the fight clear. That was, you know, the notion going into this. And why do I say that? Because I'm just looking at Tank's team and how they do things. I'm looking at that promotion as a whole and how they do things. Guys, there is a track record that goes back decades over there. You forget PBC's been around for about a decade, but Al Heyman was involved in boxing long before that. And there is an undeniable track record with how they do business. So I'm not hating, quote unquote. I'm not throwing shade. All I'm saying is there's a track record and it's undeniable. And I go back to the example I gave before with Breaking Bad. How many times can you watch the same show and not pick up on the plot? It's the same thing every time. So let's jump to the 9th round because everyone's talking about this, and there's a desperation with the Colt to try to explain what happened in the 9th round where Steve Willis botched a call that changed the outcome of a fight from what would have been a decision win for Lamont Roach, a points win for him, to a draw, essentially bailing Gervonta Davis out. It was not only one blown call, but several blown calls by Steve Willis. So there was somebody looked something up on Chat GPT. They just did a search and, you know, can a fighter take a knee and it not be counted as a knockdown? And so there was a search result that came up. It did not list a source. It didn't say which site it was pulling it from. Was it pulling it from an amateur boxing site like USA Boxing, or was it pulling it from one of the sanctioning organization sites? It certainly wasn't pulling it from the Association of Boxing Commission site, because their rules are very, very clear, and that's the rules that professional boxers adhere to. But this screenshot of a Google search or Chat GPT, whatever, was posted on social media to defend Tank, to defend Steve Willis, and it went viral. So let me clear some things up. If you land a punch on a fighter and they take a knee, they voluntarily go down within an athletic move, quote unquote, of that punch landing, that's a knockdown. It doesn't matter if they're taking a knee because their eye is uncomfortable. It doesn't matter what the reason is. You land a punch, fighter goes down, that's a knockdown. That's it. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. And I hate that I even have to do this, guys, but I want to just show this. This is the jab that lands right before Gervonta Davis takes a knee. Now, it is right on Gervonta Davis's right eye. Boom. It's clear as day. He immediately blinks and his head is pushed back because the punch lands. It pushes his body back. This is the punch that landed right before Tank took a knee, okay? He eats this punch, and then he kind of backs up, coils back, turns, takes a knee. That's a knockdown, and Steve Willis missed that. Then after that, he walks to his corner. He basically says timeout, calls timeout himself. I should mention Steve Willis started a count that he subsequently stopped for no apparent reason. Tank walks to his corner. That's not allowed. You're not allowed to call timeout in the middle of a round. It doesn't matter if you're feeling uncomfortable. It doesn't matter if something's in your eye or whatever. You can't just call a timeout, okay? Then his corner enters the ring area and works on him. That is absolutely not allowed. Not only is that grounds for like a point deduction, that's grounds for disqualification. We have seen countless fights end in a disqualification because the corner entered the ring. That's amateur and pro. Okay. So there were multiple mishaps, multiple miscues there by Steve Willis. And I have to call out the commission people who were there that night, because apparently there was a review and they determined, oh, yeah, everything's fine. So that this outcome of that round absolutely affected the fight. Okay. It's not as if this was a domination by Tank and he dominated every round before this and after this moment. Okay. Because that would be similar to what happened with Daniel Dubois, Alexander Usyk. And I've seen the Colt bringing that up. Completely uncomparable to this. This decision directly changed the outcome of the fight and cost Lamont Roach potentially millions of dollars. Okay, so that's a huge, huge thing. All right, now apparently the New York Commission's reviewing it. I don't think anything's going to come from it. I don't think they're going to change the ruling of the fight. I think we'll get a rematch. Tank's team is calling out, teasing a fight with Lomachenko again. I am not at all interested in that fight. I think Lomachenko should just retire. He's only had 3 fights, I want to say, since like 2021. He's been semi-retired for the last few years anyway, or last couple of years. I don't really want to see that. For Tank, he should go right into the immediate rematch here. Real quick, I want to talk about the eye thing, because Gervonta Davis used the excuse of, I got grease in my eyes, right? I got my hair did, and I got grease in my eyes. My question is this, and no one's asked this, okay? Did the grease not drip in your eyes during the fight week workouts because you sweat during that? Did the grease not get in your eyes at all during fight week? Did it not get in your eyes when you were warming up in the dressing room and sweating and working up a sweat before you walked to the ring? Did the grease not get in your eyes during rounds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? Why didn't the grease go back in your eyes in rounds 10, 11, or 12? Why did the grease only go in your eyes during this one moment where your opponent just so happened to land a punch in the eye? Do you want to know what really happened, guys? Lamont Roach's glove made contact with Gervonta Davis's eyeball, okay? And maybe it was sweat on that glove. Perhaps it was some grease. Maybe it was grease that Lamont Roach's team had put on his face in between rounds, coagulant, whatever. Maybe it was the hair grease, and maybe in a clinch, Lamont's glove rubbed up against Tank's hair, and that caused him to get some grease on that glove. Whatever it was, sweat, grease, whatever, that got in Tank's eye because a punch landed. It wasn't because it dripped down from his hair magically after not doing that all during fight week, warm-ups, the first 8 rounds. It's because a punch landed in the eye. For any of you out there who have ever competed in boxing, you know what that feels like. When a punch, or even during a clinch, a glove can like rub across your eye, and some sweat or just whatever's on that glove gets on you, a dirty ass glove, and it gets in your eye. That shit burns. It's uncomfortable, right? And you're basically blinking for the rest of the round trying to work through it. And, you know, like your trainer will be like, thumb, you know, or whatever. And you just have to work through it. So that moment, that knockdown, that knee, that timeout was 100% caused by a punch. And per the rules of professional boxing, that is a knockdown. Tank taking the timeout is another violation that could have docked him a point. He could have lost 2 points in that round. Tank's corner working on him in the middle of a round is grounds for disqualification. So I don't like to use the word robbery in a close fight, which this was. This was a close fight. 7 rounds to 5, either way. I think you'd have to give Tank all the swing rounds to score it for him. I personally thought that Roach edged it, but it was a close fight. And even if you had it 6 rounds apiece plus the knockdown, Roach takes it. So I don't like using the word robbery, but this certainly feels like an injustice because of what took place in the 9th round. And again, I'll compare it very, very briefly to the Usyk-Dubois fight, where Dubois had this moment where he landed a shot that looked pretty low to me, But even if you thought it was quote unquote borderline and could have been legal, the referee made a call and Usyk got a break, and then he proceeded to come back in the fight that he had dominated up until that point, dominated the rest of the fight, and stopped Dubois. So it had no bearing really on the outcome of the fight. You may disagree with the ref's call, but per the rules of boxing, he didn't break any rules. The call wasn't wrong or right. You may disagree with it, but what I'm saying is it didn't violate any rules, okay? What Steve Willis did, and the commission absolutely violated the rules of boxing. It went against the rules of boxing, and it absolutely affected the outcome of the fight. If they had gotten that ruling correct, if Steve Willis had just called it a knockdown, Lamont Roach wins the fight. It changes the history of the lightweight division in this era, all of that. So that's the point here, guys. All right, we'll leave it here. We'll talk more about this in the future. I'll see you at the fights. Peace.